We begin the current Daf, Masech Shabbos Daf Mem Beis. Our Gemara is immediately continuing a discussion with the previous Daf. Our shiur is co-sponsored by Kalzich and Echeskel. Torah Anytime and Daf Chaim. We appreciate everyone joining us and coming along for the ride on Zoom. Some ideas we're going to discuss on today's Daf is where we're allowed to do an Issa D'Rabbanan for public safety. Although generally we cannot violate Issa D'Rabbanan, but of course if it's dangerous, Sakanas Nafashos, one could even do a Issa D'Oraisa, but when there's not a Sakanas Nafashos, but there's just public safety, one could even violate Issa D'Rabbanan. This year we're going to be discussing a lot about mixing hot and cold liquids regarding the status of if it's on the top or it's on the bottom, how much, how hot it is. Additionally, we're going to be discussing what's known as kali habishal, items that may be more easily or less easily cooked, its status as it changes depending on what type of pot we're talking about. And then we're going to start the second half of this parak. We're going to start the halachas of muktzah, so regarding moving non-muktzah items for the sake of muktzah items. Some of the terms that's going to be important for today's daf is malacha shenitzricha legufa, which means to say something that it's the same halacha that was done in the Mishkan, but it's not for its intended purpose. You're doing it for some other purpose. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that's still a malacha d'oraisa. According to Rabbi Shimon, that's a malacha d'Rabbanan. That's not the biblically violated malacha. Additionally, from the opening topic that the Gemara is going to discuss is regarding a karmelis. Karmelis is a rabbinically prohibited area, although it's not a Rishus HaRabim, and technically it's a Rishus HaYachid, but since to the private domains it looks like a Rishus HaRabim, the Rabbanan gave it a quasi halacha Rishus HaRabim. Additionally, an important term that's going to come up is what's called ilah gavar or tata gavar, which is a machlekes elsewhere in the Gemara in Shas, and it's brought up here in today's daf. Ilah gavar means to say the one on the top is the stronger, which is let's say, which is going to be the topic we're going to be discussing regarding a cup or regarding a bath. If one is mixing hot and cold water, so if you're pouring hot into cold, which one is going to dominate? That it's going to be mevashal or not. So the concept of ilah gavar is that the upper one is dominating. So if you're pouring hot into cold, it's going to cook. But if you're tata gavar, even if you have a boiling hot tub, if you're pouring in cold water, still the bottom is tata. So it's going to be the stronger one, and it's going to dominate, and it's going to cook. So that's going to depend on the concept of ilah and tata. This year we're going to be discussing two opposite things that we're going to introduce: kali habishal and churmi habishal. Kali habishal are very easily cooked. So although generally we said in the past two dafim that on the kli sheni things cannot cook, but things that are very, very flimsy in their substance, they could cook even in a kli sheni. Whereas we're going to find things like the ox meat that are what's called churmi habishal. Although we say that a kli rishon on the fire is the same off the fire, it's still the original pot that was on the fire and therefore it could cook, certain things even in a kli rishon, if it's off the fire, are not going to be able to cook. So introducing in today's daf two opposite things that could cook even in a kli sheni, and things that won't cook even on a kli rishon off the pot. So we begin the current daf mem beis amid ab. On the top line of the amid, the second word, where the Gemara is immediately continuing a discussion from the previous daf, and that is we had said the previous daf a machlekes regarding how to interpret the halacha of our Mishnah. We said mechem shepinehu. We have the opinion of Shmuel, who he held that a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, that regarding the halacha, this is where it's going to. He said regarding this is going to come up regarding malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, regarding davar she'ein miskaven, something that's not intended. He said that regarding that he holds like Rabbi Shimon, and therefore he interpreted the halacha of the Mishnah even if there's a shiur litzarif. We said that even if you fill up the water all the way to the top. When you heated up the pot, you took a pot off the fire. Shepinehu was that you emptied it out, and then you fill it up. So Rav said you can't say you fill it up all the way to the top, because he's going like Rabbi Yehuda. Shmuel said no, you could even say you fill it up, what's called a shiur l'tzav, you fill it up all the way to the top. It's going to be mitzaref. It's going to do makah b'pot, it's going to solidify the pot. Doesn't make a difference. That's davar she'ein miskaven. That's not intended to be done, and therefore he could interpret the halacha of the Mishnah like that. Because Shmuel holds, regarding a davar she'ein miskaven, that he holds like Reb Shimon. And that's where the Gemara continues and says, remember, is that to say the Shmuel, Reb Shimon, like Reb Shimon, that we said regarding davar she'ein miskaven, Svirele holds like Reb Shimon. So therefore the Gemara's question is, and in a simple way, it's that regarding something of kavanah regarding the malacha, that if it's not exactly as it was in the Mishkan, which is, let's say, intended, then he holds like Reb Shimon. But V'amar Shmuel, which the following halacha is halacha l'maisa, Shmuel says, Mechaben gachelish hamateches b'shus harabim. A person could extinguish a coal of metal in the Rishus harabim, which people, what they used to do is they would throw out of the house or out of the store the junky pieces of metal, which are still boiling hot. Now, the reason why you're allowed to extinguish such a coal in Rishus harabim on Shabbos is because biblically, there's no kibui extinguishing biblically on metal, because metal actually doesn't burn, it glows. But rabbinically, it is prohibited to extinguish it. But you're allowed to go ahead and extinguish such a coal in Rishus harabim on Shabbos, so that because when there's a danger to the public, they didn't make the rabbinic decree regarding putting out the fire. Now, that's regarding a metal coal. But says Shmuel, but you're not allowed to go ahead and extinguish a wooden coal, because that's a biblical violation of kibui, and therefore you're going to be chayav for skila. That's what Shmuel's halacha was. So metal coal, yes, to not cause a danger, but not that of wooden. The problem is, says the Gemara, but if you think that Shmuel holds like Reb Shimon, then afilah shel eitz nami, then even if it's a wooden coal, you should be permitted to extinguish it in Rishus harabim on Shabbos. Why? Because Reb Shimon holds of what's known as malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. What's a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa? Like we mentioned, that it's not intended for that purpose. So although you're intending to extinguish, do the act, but the desired result is not what it was for in the Mishkan. So any type of extinguishing is malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. Why? Why are you extinguishing it? You rather not have had it on fire in the first place. Only if you're trying to make charcoal or you're trying to singe a wick, you need the fire to be lit to want to extinguish it, because you need it to be made into a wick or made into charcoal. Then you want to extinguishing it. It's for this purpose of extinguishing. Usually it's just, I don't want this thing here. Not that I want to make the extinguishing. I'd rather in this situation not have had the fire in the first place. So every type of extinguishing, especially here when it's in the street, is a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. Now, Rabbi Yehuda holds it's also midiraisa. Reb Shimon holds you're pater midiraisa. So if you tell me Shmuel holds like Reb Shimon regarding davar she'ein miskaven, that he says you're going to be pater, like we said when you have shiur l'tzara from the previous daf. He tell me he holds like Reb Shimon. So why over here regarding malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, that he seems to be saying like Rabbi Yehuda? According to Reb Shimon, it should be mutter. Like he says, Rabbi Shimon regarding davar she'ein miskaven, so therefore here he should hold like Rabbi Shimon that you pater midaraisa on the malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. Now, this is a little bit difficult. And Taisus asks, what was the questioner asking? What, because Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon regarding davar she'ein miskaven, he has to hold like him regarding malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, that is going to be pater. So Taisus says that the assumption of the questioner was that yes, they are dependent one on the other. Meaning, Rabbi Yehuda, who holds malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, you're going to be chayiv where you're intending to do the malacha. Malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, you're intending to do, you just not for that result. So therefore, when you're not having kavana, also, which is similar, so that's where the chacham was stringent, because really not having kavana is not the malacha. So the chacham was stringent. But if you hold like Rabbi Shimon, that holds that you're going to be exempt, even when you're having intent, when it's malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, where if you're not having kavana, for sure that's not the tzricha legufa, because not having intent. So the Rabbanan were not concerned to go ahead and say when there's davar she'ein miskaven, which is even less, at least malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, you're having intent to do the malacha. You're just not for that intended purpose. So then davar she'ein miskaven, then for sure the Chacham are not going to go ahead and say that's aser, because even when you're having intention, it's only going to be prohibited rabbinically. So therefore, that's where the questioner assumed that if he holds like him regarding regarding davar she'ein miskaven, for sure holds like him regarding malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. But that's what they says. No, the truth is, as the Gemara is going to answer right now, they're not dependent one on the other. And that Shmuel, even though he holds malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, like computer that you're going to be chayiv, but could be by davar she'ein miskaven, where you're not having kavanah at all, he could hold like Reb Shimon that you're going to be pater because he didn't have any kavanah at all, as the Gemara answers. But davar she'ein miskaven, regarding something that was not intended, savala Reb Shimon. That he holds like Reb Shimon, like we said, that you're not having any kavanah at all. You're just dragging. I'm not intending to do the malach of chayrish at all. But regarding that of a malacha that you're intending to do the action, you're just not necessarily intending the desired result that it was done in the Mishkan, where here I'm not trying to make charcoals, I'm just trying to put out the fire. That's where Sabbath Rabbi Yehuda, that's where Rabbi Yehuda, which that's the halacha is that that you're going to be chayiv, whereas according to Rabbi Shimon you would be potter. Again, whereas by Dabashin Meskaven, that he holds like Rabbi Shimon that you're going to be like he holds that it's going to be mutter, not like Rabbi Yehuda who holds that it's going to be us. Now, Ravina, and this is also important halacha l'maisa that it could come up. Hilkach, therefore, since you're telling me the Rabbana did not make this is parenthetical. We introduced this previous halacha of Shmuel to ask a question, does he hold like Reb Shimon or not? And we said he does, but that's regarding Davish and Meskavin, as we said in the previous stuff. But now regarding Malacha Shin Tzich Legufa. But we also mentioned his halacha that to save the public from any mishap, from getting injured, that you're allowed to do Malacha de Rabbanan. So he says, Hilkach, therefore, since you said that they did not make a shvus, they didn't make the rabbinic decrees of, let's say, extinguishing a metal coal when it could be dangerous to the public, so kaitz b'shus harabim. So if there's a thorn in the public domain, someone's going to get hurt on that thorn. Now, it's not a danger to life. Danger to life, of course, you could do malacha deraisa. But it's talking about that someone just might get hurt. You let him move that thorn less than 4 amas at a time till you move it to the sides of the b'shus harabim, which that's a rabbinic decree. Biblically, you only, like we start off this masechta, only if you carry 4 amas. Rabbinically, you cannot be carrying less than 4 amas at a time, but because it might injure somebody, you let them move a little bit at a time. And the person can talk about what's in someone's house. Let's say there's glass that on the floor, it's muktzah or whatever. Same thing, it's rabbinically, you're allowed to, so people don't get hurt. Now, but Carmelis, and that's this picture over here, regarding a Carmelis, afilatuva, then you let them move it even more than Dalet Amas at a time, because carrying in the Carmelis, and that's what we say, many of our Rosh Hashanahs, we don't even have Rosh Hashanahs. They're really Carmelists. There's not 600,000 people there every single day, etc. So there, you actually would be able to go ahead and move it more than Dalet Amas at a time. If in the street that's a Carmelist, that someone can get hurt on the broken glass or whatever it is, that you let them move it even more than Dalet Amas at a time, because it's rabbinic, and for rabbinic violation, they remove that because of Nizkat Rab, that people shouldn't get injured. Now we continue with the halacha of the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said, Abo Noisin B'chulu. If you recall from the previous daf, we spoke about this halacha of the Mechem Shapino, which there were 2 different interpretations. What does it mean? Did you remove the kettle from the fire? Did you remove the hot water from the kettle? But be that as it may, we said that if you're going to pour in cold water now, you might be cooking the water. So he said, you're not going to put in a little bit amount of water, because that's going to cook the cold water that you're pouring in. If you pour in a lot of cold water, then it's going to be permitted, because then you're only warming it up, you're not heating it up. If you're doing it to its boiling point, you'd be cooking water on Shabbos, which is forbidden. So regarding that halacha, the Gemara continues on that theme regarding, okay, so what am I allowed to do? If I want to go ahead and warm something up or cool something down, what's the halacha? I might be cooking water. What's permitted? So it says the Gemara as follows. So again, like we mentioned in the introduction, that this is going to be very important regarding the concept of tata gavar, which is an assumption, the way Rashi is saying it, that our Gemara is going like, that the bottom one is the more dominant. So again, like if you're pouring hot water into cold water, the cold water on the bottom is going to be the stronger one. So the hot water is not going to be cooking the colder one. Now, let's say a bathtub, which is the bottom is hot, then you cannot pour in some cold water. Let's say you want to either, cool off the hot tub. You're going to be heating up this cold water, so that's going to be forbidden. So we begin the brayso. A person could put in hot water, into the cold water, because, as we said, the Tana here holds of what's called tata gavar. The bottom one is stronger, and therefore, the hot water is not going to be heating up the cold water. It's just going to go ahead and cool it off. So therefore, this is a permitted case. But you can't pour in the cold water into hot water, because the bottom one is going to heat up the upper one because of tata gavar, because the bottom one is going to be stronger than the upper one. That's different by Shammai. Now, Tosfos gives a different interpretation. He says, if you're saying it's because of tata gavar, this is a shas machlekes, what's the mandam ilah gavar going to do? So he brings to Rabbeinu Tam that the reason why Shammai holds that hot into cold is mutter is because generally the thing you're pouring into has the majority of the liquid. You usually put a little bit into what's a lot. If you're pouring 2 cups, if you want to mix a hot and cold one, you generally, unless you're from maybe like the way they talk about the town from Chalm, you're gonna pour the little into the lot. So therefore, if you're pouring the hot into the cold, the majority is the cold. Therefore, that little amount of water is not going to cook it. But that's what Beis Shammai says. You now put the cold into the hot, because the hot is the bottom one, which is then the majority one, and then that little amount of water is going to cook. So that's exactly what we said in the previous daf. If you put in a lot, then it's not going to cook. So therefore, that's the way Taisus understands, not like the way Rashi is saying as we're explaining with Tata Gavar, but it depends on which one's the majority. But that's the Rabbi Shloimy. Now, Basil says, according to the way the Tanakhama explains, Bein chamen l'toichad tzayna. No, whether it's hot into cold, or bein tzayna l'toichad chamen, whether it's cold into hot, mutter, it's permitted. Why? Because b'medvam, when did we say this halacha, Basil, is because it's by a cup, where then you're doing it for drinking purposes. So there's 2 points. In a cup, you don't usually like it too hot. I know I have a lot of coffees that have burnt my lips, right? You don't want it too hot. And moreover, because a cup is a cliche, and you don't cook a cup on the fire. And that's actually a very important halacha we keep on mentioning. We rule like this of Basil, as we're going to see later on. A cliche is not mavashal. So therefore, that's what Basil said, buy a cup, even if it's cold into hot, it's going to be okay. Because in a cup of water, you don't make it too hot, and plus it's a cliche. So not like Beis Shammai, who they say that it's going to be aser, even in the cliche, from cold into hot. No, but still hold cold into hot is going to be permitted. Aval bambati, but regarding a bathtub, which Taisa points out, we're talking about a bathtub that's a cliche. This bathtub was not heat on the fire itself. It's a cliche. And still in the cliche, the Bryce is coming to differentiate between a cup, which is for drinking, to a bathtub. Since they make it very hot, so what? So it's a cliche. So Taisa explains, there's a gzeira that someone who's going to see the bathtub so hot is going to think that it's a klirishin, that it was heated up on the fire itself, meaning there's a fire underneath the tub heating it up. You took some wood or whatever it is, you heat it up over here. So you would think so. So therefore, even though it's a cliche, says the Tanakhama, for Basil, that chamen l'toichad tzaynin, hot into cold is going to be mutter. But this case, even though it's a cliche, you cannot pour cold into hot because of tata gavar, or like Taisa says, because of a gzeira, because of you might confuse and think that it's a kli rishon. That's the Tanakhama in Basil. But Rabbi Shloimy ben Menashe Eiser, he says no, it's forbidden even hot into cold, even for the bathtub with the water they make very hot, even hot into cold is going to be us. On that, Rabbi Nachman, he says halacha Rabbi Shloimy ben Menashe, halacha follows like Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe. Now, hold on a second, because these pictures are going to be a little bit complicated, because the Gemara is going to have a discussion regarding exactly what is this parameter. But this picture is actually regarding, we'll see exactly what Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe is talking about, but when he says regarding the hot into the hot into the cold that's usher, we'll see if that's referring to the tub or it's referring to the glass of water. So on that continues the Gemara. So Rav Yosef thought to say that safal, a wash basin, which is the water that they use to wash themselves, harei kamvati, that's like a bathtub. Where although it's what's called a cliche, you don't take this wash basin on the fire. It's you pour from the kettle that you heat up and you pour into the wash basin. But since it's not for drinking purposes, it's for bathing. So they said, so that's why he thought that it's going to be usher, because it has one of the two reasons of the bathtub, which is because they make it very hot. So therefore they made a gzeira to say that it's going to be usher. Abai says to him, no, Reb explicitly taught in the Brisa, safal inikamvati, as we have here in the picture. No, a wash basin is not like a bathtub, and it's going to be permitted to put the hot into the cold. So though this picture is cold into hot, but that's what we're saying that we're saying regarding that it's not like the bathtub. We're saying it's like the way Basil said regarding the pouring from the cold into the hot. Even that's going to be permitted because it's a kli sheni. Now, so then the Gemara says, "L'may disal gadai to make car this that you originally thought the safal harehu kamvati." So he originally thought he corrected him because he brought him a brayso Reb Chia. But he originally thought that the wash basin is like the bathtub, which we said by the bathtub that's going to be aser. So he says, but if that would be the case, and additionally, Rav Nachman halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe, Rav Nachman said halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe, who he says that's even forbidden to go ahead and put in the hot into the cold. This is where it could get a little bit complicated. But he's saying a compound question. He's saying, wait a second. You were telling me that this safel, the way he originally thought, that a safel is going to be like da'amvati. Now, that means to say that it's usher even hot into the cold. Meaning it depends. We had a machlokes regarding amvati. We had the Tanakama. Beis Hill. These pictures are a little bit confusing because sometimes they should be bathtubs. But we had the Tanakama of Beis Hill who said that regarding the bathtub, what's the halacha? You could do hot into the cold, but you can't do the cold into the hot. Now, that's according to the Tanakama. And again, Rav Yisrael was saying the wash basin is like the bathtub. But V'amar Rav Nachman, we had quoted the Rav Nachman says, halacha Rav Shimon ben Menashe. Now, which is, Rav Shimon ben Menashe said, regarding the bathtub, that it's forbidden even hot into the cold. Not only cold into the hot, but even the hot into the cold. And you're telling me that the wash basin is like the bathtub. Those two together. Elef, but if that's the case, then b'Shabbos and Shabbos rechitza b'cham and leka. So are you telling me you're never going to be able to bathe wash yourself with hot water on Shabbos? Why? Because, like we said, according to Reb Shimon, even hot into cold is forbidden. And you're telling me that the wash basin is like the bathtub. So you're never going to be able to have hot water, even though it's heated from before Shabbos, that you don't have to cool it down a little because it's boiling hot water. So if that's the case, you're never going to be able to bathe yourself, because even not your hands, your face, and your feet, which the problem is, we taught on Daf Lamates Amud Beis that upon the other will be a lot of watch on Shabbos that you heat up the water from before Shabbos, and we said that they needed it so bad that they had to even keep Chabit Tveria. People they wanted to always wash with hot water, but you can never wash with hot water because every hot water is boiling hot, and that's the only way you could use it. Only if you like, but then you have to take out the chill a little bit. But you never get to take out the chill. You can't even do chamen into tzayin, tzayin into the chamen, because you tell me that the way you thought at least. How could you even have entertained such an opinion that the safel is kamvati, that the wash basin is like the bathtub, but the bathtub, the way we rule is like Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe, and he says by the bathtub that not only like the Tanakama said in Beis Hill that you can't put in the cold into the hot, he said you can't even put in the hot into the cold. So I can't put hot into cold, cold into hot. So I can never cool down the hot water. How can I never use the hot water to go ahead and wash my hands, my face, and my feet? Says the Gemara, Misavra, do you think Rabbi Shimon is safer? This I was saying that it could complicate what's he going on. Do you think Rabbi Shimon was going on the end, where it sounds like when you're reading the Bryce, it sounds like he's going in the previous halacha? In other words, that the Tanakama only permitted that to put in the hot into the cold. By the bathtub, the Tanakama says we're going to the bathtub, and I'll put a cold into the hot, but you could put in hot into the cold. On that, Reb Shimon was coming along to say that no, for the bathtub, and this is how we were understanding up until now, that for the bathtub you can't even put in hot into the cold. No, a reisha. He was going on the reisha regarding the drinking. This that Beis Hill said that you're allowed to do in a cup, not only like the way Rabbi Shammai said to do hot into cold, but Beis Hill said you could even do cold into hot. That's what Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe is coming to say, that no, that's going to be aser. As follows. Beis Hill Matir, and Beis Hill had said not like Beis Shammai regarding the cup. They said it's permitted bein chamel teich tzayin, whether you're doing hot or cold, or bein tzayin teich chamen, or cold into the hot. Because it's a cup, like we said, it's not so hot anyway, and it's a klisheni. So even though we generally say tato gavar, and you shouldn't be able to put cold into hot, we said no, Beis Hill holds you're allowed to put in even the cold into the hot. And that's what Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe was coming to be oyster. He says no, it's forbidden even not even, only by the case of tzayin teichamen, the cold into the hot. So when we had the words of Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe oyster, it wasn't going back on the bathtub. It was going on the case of Beis Hill of the cup, that he says no. The case of Beis Hill adds on and says you're allowed to do even the cold into the hot. That's what Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe says no, that's forbidden. So that says the Gemara, wait a second, that's what Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe was saying, and this Taisa explains this is only what we would have said according to the Havamina of Rav Yosef, because we needed to have that you could use hot water on Shabbos. But then, Lamer Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe, Dama K'Beis Shammai, what are you saying? The way you're interpreting Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe, then he's saying like Beis Shammai, because that's exactly what Beis Shammai's opinion was. Beis Hill was saying you could pour hot into cold, cold into hot. Beis Shammai says you could only put hot into cold and not cold into hot. But Rabbi Shimon, then Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe, who says it's forbidden to do cold into hot, is exactly like Beis Shammai. We're not going to presume that he's saying like Beis Shammai, because Allah doesn't fall like Beis Shammai. So this is what he was saying. He was saying that no, they don't disagree in this halacha, because even Beis Hill says it's usher to do the cold into the hot, even in the cup. So therefore, that was the interpretation. So therefore, we could understand what would have been Rabbi Yisrael's Havamina. Again, according to the conclusion, that's not what he's saying. According to the conclusion, then Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh was talking about regarding the bathtub, and it's regarding that he was disagreeing, and he was saying that you're not allowed to put even the hot into the cold. Now, Gemara concludes and says the halacha l'maisa. Amar Pun the Bredi Vishua. He says Chazina le Rava. He says I see by Rava the like kapet amana. Says that when there was a mana, which is a vessel, meaning a kli sheni, I saw that it wasn't particular, which is totally like Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel said when you have a cup, a kli sheni, it doesn't make a difference if it's the hot into the cold into the hot. You get your coffee, here, geschmack of coffee. What happens is that you have a kli sheni. You don't take the cup's not, well, styrofoam anyway, but you're not heating up the cup on the fire itself. So when you have it in the kli sheni, again, we'll get into the discussion shortly regarding there are some exceptions to the rule, but in the kli sheni, you have the hot water in there, you could pour in the cold milk, you could do something that it's going to put in. Beis Hillel said that doesn't make a difference. So he says, I saw by Rava that when there was a kli sheni, it didn't make a difference. Now why? Now Tes explains why it seems like we're introducing a different Bryce Reb Chia, or it could be the same one we mentioned before, but in the Tana Reb Chia, from when we have the Bryce Reb Chia, Naisen Adam Kitim Shalmayim. He says a person could put a flask of water, l'teich safa shalmayim, into another flask of water, bein cham l'teich tzainin, whether it's hot into cold, or bein tzayin l'teich cham, whether it's cold into hot. Doesn't make a difference. A kli sheni you could put in either way. We don't consider that as a problem about bishul, and therefore you could put hot into cold into hot. Now, on that only Rapun Rabashi says, wait a second, what do you bring a right from the Bryce Reb Chia? Maybe that's different. The halacha Reb Chia, the mifsek kli. The way they presume, the way you're reading this Bryce Reb Chia, is that you're taking a flask. Let's say the classic case is the baby bottle. You're taking the baby bottle and you want to warm it up. So there's hot water in the kli rishon, and or kli sheni, meaning it's like you took it off from the fire and you have it in a bottle, in a bowl, and you put the baby bottle and you want to warm it up. So there, the reason why it's not a problem, even though it's, let's say, the cold baby bottle into the hot bowl, is because there's the vessel, the bottle itself is interrupting between the two liquids. So that's a decrease in the heat. So maybe that's going to be permitted. But maybe if you actually pour the baby milk into the water, to that water, maybe that would be forbidden. So how you being arrived from the Bryce Reb Chia? That Amalei says, no, read the words. Ma'ara itmar. It doesn't say noisen. Really, the words are supposed to say that you pour. Ma'ara adam kitim shalmayim. A person could pour a flask of water, l'teich sevel shalmayim, into a bowl of water, bein cham l'teich tzayin, whether hot into cold, bein tzayin l'teich cham, whether cold into hot, which is like the custom of Rava, which was like Basil, that when it comes to a cliche, it doesn't make a difference what is going into what, that it's going to be permitted. So ultimately, the Gemara's conclusion was, like the opinion of Beis Hillel, that when it comes to a cup, which is a cliche, the cliche is not mavash. And that's going to be important for the next mission we're going into, that there might be some exceptions to the rule, but a cliche, you could put hot into cold into hot. Regarding Amvati, so we had a machlekes Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh. Tanakama held that, okay, hot into cold you could do, that's like tato gavar, but, and there's a cliche, but not hot into cold, either because of tato gavar, because it's very hot, or the way Tosfos says, because of gezerah, that you might come to do it in the kli rishon. Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh says, no, it's going to be usher, and he says that no, even by this cliche on vati, you now go ahead and do even hot into cold, and that's what we said, that the wash basin is not like dam vati, and the wash basin is going to be permitted. It's going to be just like the way Beis Hillel says for a hot cup, whether cold and hot into cold, is going to be permitted by the wash basin because it's ultimately still a cliche. Now we continue in the next Mishnah, which says, continuing on these halachas of bishul of our perek, the Mishnah says, ha'ilpas, and the halacha follows like this important ruling. If you have a frying pan, or vaktera, or a pot, sheviran, which was taken off from the fire, mirusachem, boiling hot, like Rashi says, like bein hashmashos, we always presume by bein hashmashos while it's boiling hot. So, the halacha is, lo yitin l'toichan tavlin. You're not allowed to put inside that pan spices when it gets dark. Why? And it's not really spices, it's really anything, but it's just important for the dispute in the Mishnah, because a kli rishon, this pot is the original. Kli rishon is the first pot that was on the fire. So even if it's off the fire, as long as it's still boiling, it's going to be mavashal. It's going to cook. So therefore, you're not allowed to put any spices in that pot. Because let's say you were cooking in the Talmudic times, you're cooking and then you add the spice later. You don't want to cook the spices in the pot. No, you can't. If you took it off in the fire, it's still boiling hot. It's going to cook the spices. Now, however, it's a to days, but you could put the spices into a plate because that's a klisheni. That's not going to cook anymore. Now there is discussion in the place regarding a solid versus a liquid, which possibly solid would still be problematic because that doesn't go. But let's say like a liquid where that goes with the walls of the vessel, because as you see by a liquid, it goes according to that. So then it gets cooled off and it goes in the klisheni. So then regarding your soup, then you could add spices. It's not going to go ahead and cook. Which a tamche is like this large serving platter, which you pour from the frying pan into that, and then you pour it from that into people's plates. So either way, you could add spices over there because that's a klisheni. And klisheni is not mavashal. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, he disagrees. He says, lakolhu naisen. He says, you could put the spices into anything, which the Gemara is going to explain what's he talking about, a kli rishon or kli sheni. Is he being mekel or being machmel? We'll jump in the Gemara right away to explain that. He says, no, you could put the spices in. Unless it's something that has vinegar, which that would cook the spices when it's hot, or vitzir. Tzir is the what drips from the fish when you pickle it, the fish brine. That those things are very strong, so they would go ahead and cook it. Then that would be an exception, but generally the spices could be, you could put into any pot. So the Gemara wonders, wait a second, Ibayluhu, Rabbi Yehuda a reisha koi? Is Rabbi Yehuda going on the reisha? Meaning there was two halachas Tanna Kama said. Tanna Kama says that the spices cannot be put into a kli rishon, but could be put into kli shen. So is he going on the reisha, which was going on the frying pan, which the Tanna Kama says even though it's off the fire, I'll put in the spices. Under that, Rabbi Yehuda came to say that no. Frying pans, every frying pan you're allowed to put it in. Because actually, kli rishon is not going to cook a tavlin, it's not going to cook a spice. And therefore, ula kula, he was going leniently. And he was saying, no, you could put spice in the kli rishon. Maybe a sefer koi. Oh, maybe he was going the second half of the halacha. On the plate and on the tray, which the Tanna Kama says you're allowed to. And that Rabbi Yehuda was coming to say, no, every plate and tray, I agree to you, that yes, you could put in the spices, except, and this is where he was coming to be stringent, if it has vinegar or fish brine, then even the klisheni, you're not allowed to put in, and therefore Uluchum, he was coming to say stringently. There was two parts in Rabbi Yehuda's halacha. He was saying you could put in every kli, besides have chayim sincere. So what was the thrust of his opinion? Was he coming to be makel, and saying that you could put into even the kli rishon, except, I agree to you that you can't put into kli rishon if it has chayim sincere? Or is he coming to be machmir, saying no, yeah, I agree to you that you could only put into klisheni. But if there's chayim sincere, you can't even put it into a klisheni, because then it's going to cook even the klisheni. So we have a clear pariah at the time like learn no brisa. He says l'chol il pasan hu naisen. Says you could put the spices in every frying pan. L'chol akaderis reisachas, even to boiling hot pot that was taken off in the fire. Hu naisen you could put into. Except if it has vinegar or has brine, you see clearly that he says even the kli rishon, you're allowed to put in the spices unless it has chayim tzitzer, and therefore he was coming to be makel and lenient and say you could put the spices even in the kli rishon as long as it's off of the fire. Now, Sabar Yisrael Lamema. So that's what Rabbi Yehuda was saying, that spices are chomri habishal. They're harder to cook, and therefore you could even put in the kli rishon over the fire. Now, then we have a different discussion. Sabar Yisrael Lamema. Rabbi Yosef thought to say, in the opinion of the Tanna Kama, that melech harehu katavu, that salt is like a spice. The bekli rishon bishla, and the place I'm talking about depends where the salt comes from. It cooks in the kli rishon, ubekli sheni le bashala, but in the kli sheni it doesn't cook, which is exactly how the Tanna Kama says regarding spices. Spices cook in the kli rishon, you cannot put in there. In kli sheni it doesn't cook, so therefore you can put in there. However, on that, Amalei Abaya, so we're going to see there's three different opinions possibly regarding salt. So on that, Abaya said to him that, and the first opinion was the way Rabbi Yosef thought to say, that it's like spices. On that, Abaya said to him, well, Tanya Rabbi told in the Brisa, the melech ain't a katavla. No, salt's not like spices, which is the beklisheni nami bashala, that it cooks even in the klisheni. You cannot put your salt in the soup if you go right from the pot on the fire to the bowl, because it's going to cook even the klisheni. Which says the Gemara, Pligi Rav Nachman, that disagrees with Rav Nachman. Because the Rav Nachman, he says actually a third opinion. He says, Tzricha milcha bishul. He says, you have to cook salt so much of it, you want to cook it. Kebisra de tura, like the meat of an ox, which is that it's not like spices, because even on a kli rishon, it doesn't cook if it's over the fire. That's how hard it is to cook it. Like the meat of an ox, which is so tough. You can't cook it unless it's literally on the fire itself. So that's three different opinions. Now, those that say a different version. Rabbi Yisrael thought to say, as we mentioned before, melech hareir ketavel. He thought salt's like spices, it's a spice. The kli rishon b'shala, that it cooks in the kli rishon, b'kli shein le b'shala, but doesn't cook in the kli shein. Adam Labai says, but Tani Reb Chia, we're in the Bryce Reb Chia, opposite version. Melech in the ketavel, it starts with the same words that salt's not like a spice. But here in this version, he told them the b'kli rishon nami le b'shala, that it doesn't even cook even in the kli rishon, and they'd be allowed to put it, even if it's in the kli rishon, as long as it was taken from the fire. According to this version, behind Rav Nachman, that's exactly what Rav Nachman said. Tzricha milcha bishula, salt needs to be cooked, kibisra de tura, like the meat of an ox. Again, and according to this version, Rabbi Chia was saying exactly like the interpretation of Rabbi Chia, that salt is not like spices, not one extreme that even in the kli sheini it's going to cook, but no, that even in the kli rishon it's not going to cook. Now we continue with the topic of muktzah. The second half of this parak discusses the laws as it relates to muktzah, which the word muktzah itself means set aside, which means to say for Shabbos you need something to be what's called muchan, be prepared that you're intending to use this thing on Shabbos, or else it's considered muktzah. The place can discuss at great length in the Rishonim why did they make this prohibited, which we'll probably get to at some point in this Masechta. But for this purpose is just to understand that the muktzah is a rabbinic decree, that something that wasn't intended to be used on Shabbos, you cannot move such a thing. Now, says the Mishnah, ein noisen, one cannot place on Shabbos a kli tachas haner, a bowl, a vessel underneath a lamp, l'kabel v'es hashemen, to get the dripping oil. Now, why? Because oil is muktzah, because it was set aside for the lighting of the lamp. So therefore, there's two different interpretations we're going to see in the Gemara. Either the Tana of the Mishnah holds you cannot move a kli, which is this bowl, only for something that itself could be moved. This oil is muktzah. It was part of a burning lamp, which is even Reb Shimon would hold, who's more the less restrictive muktzah interpreter. It's called muktzah machmas mitzvah. It was part of a mitzvah of a Shabbos count. You don't touch it, you don't use it. So therefore, the oil is muktzah. So I can't move this plate for that oil. I could only move something what's called l'tzarich davar nitel, for something that itself that can be moved. That's one interpretation, as we'll see. Or actually, which is the halacha l'maisa, is because what's called inala to be mevatel kli meichanai. This bowl, up until this point on Shabbos, was prepared. You were able to use it. You put your little chocolate for the Shabbos party on this bowl. Now the problem is, if I'm going to put it here now, it's now nullified from having utility to be able to put it anywhere else. Because it's almost like as if I cemented over here, which Taisus will explain that it sounds like Rashi is saying it's like boina, almost like building something. Like I just cemented over here, because from the moment that the oil drips on, the muktzah oil drips onto this plate, I can't move it anymore. I can have the muktzah item on it. So therefore, you can't put the plate over here, because now you just made this either mevatel kli mechanai, or, well, as we'll see in the Gemara on this daf, that a kli could only be moved l'tzarich davar nitel, for something that itself could be moved. So you can't put the plate here on the bottom. Now, but it says the Mishnah, if you put it there from before Shabbos, I know how it drips. We got to put that silver foil over there. The chalant's going to drip all over the place. So I'm putting this near the lamp, so then it's permitted to leave it over there, which the chiddush is that we're not concerned that maybe after it drips from the oil on it, then you're going to move it. Not concerned. If I put it here from before Shabbos, that's okay. Now, but, says the Mishnah, you cannot have benefit from the oil that dripped, because that was never considered prepared. As Taisa explains, that this could even be like Reb Shimon will say that, who he says it's generally permitted the leftover oil in the lamp. Here the Mishnah says you're not allowed to have benefit from it is as long as the light is on, the lamp is burning. Where, because it's muktzah machmas mitzvah, it's set aside for the mitzvah purpose of the Shabbos candles. Reb Shimon would agree, as the Gemara says later on, that although Reb Shimon holds there's no muktzah, only the oil in the lamp when it's burning, because since it's hooked to l'mitzvah, it becomes hooked to l'isuri, the allowed to use it. Because as Taisa says, no, it's not necessarily talking about that you take it from the lamp itself. That would be forbidden because, as we said on the previous stuff, as the Gemara says in Be'ed Daf Chol Beis Av, that's like machab, it's like extinguishing. When you take from the oil, it's like you're removing the fuel, it's like you're extinguishing it earlier. Rather, what we're talking about here in the Mishnah is it dripping from the lamp, but it could even be like Reb Shimon, because although Reb Shimon lets you use the leftover oil, no, as it's lighting, when it's dripping out, then you're not allowed to have benefit from that oil because it's huktzah l'mitzvasai, so it becomes huktzah l'isur, it becomes set aside for something prohibited to utilize, and therefore it's going to be asur. So, and that the Gemara explains the halacha of the Mishnah, which, as Taisa points out, why we're using a different case, because we want to point out the inverse, but it's essentially the same case as the Mishnah. Omer Rav Chisda says that, and this is the halacha l'maisa, Ava Pisha Amr, although that they said, this is exactly like the case of the oil, but it's just with a chicken. Although you're not allowed to put a vessel beneath a chicken, l'kabel beitzasa, to accept its egg, which is when it's laying the egg, and this is an important concept, on a slope. So what you're going to do is, if I don't put this bowl here under this chicken, it's going to roll down and it's going to get smashed and broken. So you're not allowed to put the bowl beneath the chicken to catch the egg. How do we know this? It's the inference of the halacha of the Mishnah. This is exactly like the case of not putting the kli tachas haner. So that's exactly like the same idea. You're not allowed to put the bowl underneath the chicken. Now, we'll see why are you not allowed to. Like we pointed out, that Rab is going to say because you cannot take a kli, hanitel. And now, this cannot be moved, so I cannot move this for this. This is also muktzah, so I cannot move this for this. So that's exactly the same case. Although you're not allowed to put the kli under the chicken to receive the egg, but you could put, let's say it laid an egg, and it's just lying over there. You're allowed to take this non-muktzah bowl and put it over the muktzah egg, shaloi tishav, that it shouldn't break. And this halacha l'maisa, and we don't say like the other interpretation the Gemara is going to give, that a kli cannot be moved, only be something that can be moved. This egg is muktzah. It was just laid on Shabbos. That's considered muktzah. It wasn't prepared from before Shabbos. That's beya shenolda. That's what we speak about in Masechtas Beya. So he says, on Shabbos, you're allowed to take the bowl and cover the egg. Now, Amar Rabbi says, my time Rav Chisda, what's the reason of this halacha of Rav Chisda? So he says, because Kesaver, he holds, Tarna Geilis Asui Lahatla Beit Sasa Ba'ashpa. It's normal for a chicken to lay an egg in the garbage dump. It doesn't literally mean to say necessarily garbage dump, but we're concerned that it's going to lay the egg and it's going to be there in a place where people go, which is like where they put the garbage, and that's where the chickens hang out, and people are going to step on it. So you want to put a vessel on it to protect it from getting smashed. So since that's a normal thing to happen, but this is not so common because chickens are generally not laying eggs on a slope, which is the whole reason why you would put the bowl to catch it, right? If you put a bowl to catch it, it's not going to have people stepping on it. It's still going to break. Here, where you're putting it to cover, that's normal that you would try to put a bowl. It's something that's common because the chicken may lay an egg where people do step because they hang around, they peck in the garbage dumps, and that's where your chickens might be. So it makes sense that this is something that's common that you would have to do, and this is not so common. Now, Vatzala Mitsuya Hitiru, the Rabbana permitted to go ahead and do something that is a common thing to have to save, which is to move a vessel for its purpose. So although the egg is something that cannot be moved on Shabbos, but to protect something that's a normal thing, the rabbi said that that's going to be the exemption. But to protect something that's not even so common, like a slope, or the dripping of the oil that the Mishnah was talking about, lo hitiru, they didn't permit it. So according to Rashi, the concept is regarding if it's something that's nitel or eina nitel, that even something she'eina nitel, if it's atzala mitzuya, they permit it. Taisa gives a different interpretation. He says, no, it's regarding tircha, even something that could be moved. If it's a tircha for something that's atzala she'eina mitzuya, we don't let you move something because it's unnecessary tircha. But be that as it may, we'll go with what Rashi says. According to Rabbah, the interpretation of Rav Chisda in this interesting halacha that the bowl underneath you cannot do, but the bowl on top you could do, is because this is not a common thing. Now, so the huki is not common. Taisa says it's because in general tircha, but the way Rashi says it is because, but this egg cannot be moved. We only let you move something for something that cannot be moved if it's something that's a common thing. If it's an uncommon thing, then we don't let you move. On that, Eisvei Abai. Abai asks many different questions, which goes into the next daf from 5 different sources to ask on this premise of Rabbah. He says, V'atzala she'ein mitzuya lo yitiru. Are you really saying that an uncommon saving they didn't permit? Meaning you're not allowed to move a bowl, which is not muktzah, for an egg that is muktzah, if it's not a hatzala mitzuya. But Vatanya, I'll bring you rayas, and we're going to start off with 2 of them of the 5, that you see that they let you save something, meaning to move a non-muktzah vessel for a muktzah item, even though it's not something that's common to happen. Vatanya, we'll learn the brisa. Nishbur lo yichavish shel tevel. If a person had a barrel of tevel, of untithed produce, which according to Rashi, that is the girsa, Taisus discusses that it's actually not to have it's not talking about a tevel, but we'll go the way Rashi says it. If a barrel of tevel broke, b'rosh gaga, in the person's roof. So the halach is, maybe kliyu manich tachtel. So what happens is if the vessel broke, so everything's going to be spilling out, this whole thing of wine. So you could go and put a bowl beneath that broken vessel. Now, there's 2 points to this case. Even though tevel, untithed produce, is something that cannot be moved, it's muktzah, you can't use tevel, you can't eat, it's untithed produce. And second of all, it's not common for a vessel to break, and still you see that you're allowed to move a bowl underneath that broken tevel wine. Why? You told me that although you're allowed to move a bowl for something that cannot be moved, something that's muktzah, only if it's atzala mitzuya, something that's a common occurrence. Something that's not common, they didn't give that dispensation. But a barrel breaking is not a common thing, and still we see you're allowed to move your bowl for that barrel that broke for something that cannot be moved because it's tevel wine. Says the Gemara, no, Begulfi, we're talking about a barrel chadati that's new. The shchichi depaki, new barrels tend to burst, and therefore it is a common thing, and therefore it is atzala mitzuya, and therefore you're allowed to move it. Okay, Abai asked from a different source, a Mishnah on Daf Mem Zayin Mem Beis, which this is a Mishnah, and as all these cases, they're Mishnayos generally that he's asking from. Noisnin kli tachas in there. The Mishnah said that you're allowed to put a bowl underneath a lamp, l'kabel nitzaitzis, to get the sparks of the flame that drip off from the lamp, because you don't want what's beneath it to catch on fire. Now, although by the sparks are muktzah, part of the fire, you can't move it. And second of all, it's also not common that sparks should be flying off. And yet still we see you allowed to move it for that. Says the Gemara, no, nitzait is not meshchich. You know, sparks are also common that they happen, and therefore, since they commonly happen, so you're allowed to put the bowl beneath the thing to catch the sparks, because it's hatzalah mitzuya. So therefore, that's the Gemara is in the middle of the discussion of Abai's questions on Rabbi's premise for Rav Chizda. The Rav Chizda said that you're allowed to move the bowl on it, but not underneath it. Why? Because one's hatzalah mitzuya, one's hatzalah she'ein mitzuya. And although we let you move it for something that's she'ein nitel, but that's only for something that's hatzalah mitzuya and not ein mitzuya, and that's what Abai is asking all these questions on Rabbah. Something that we spoke about today in Shabbos Daf Mem Beis was that Shmuel, as we said in the previous Daf, he holds like Rabbi Shimon regarding davar she'ein miskaven, that it's going to be mutter, which that was the case, we said, of the previous Mishnah, of even though there's a shiur letzaref, which letzaref is makkah bepatish, but since that's not your intention, you just want to you want to warm up the water that you're pouring into the hot kettle, so that's going to be permitted. But the Gemara asks it as a question, and the Gemara says yes, but not regarding malacha she'en tzrich legufa. So let's say by the coals of wood that's in the Rishus HaRabim, he says that you can't just move it. It's a rabbinic, it's a malacha she'en tzrich legufa. When you're extinguishing it, your intention is not to make any charcoal. So to make a difference, there he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that that's going to be aser. Then we went to explain the halacha of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that there is a problem of bishul in water, so therefore it's only permitted, as we explained, that it was the chamen that was taken off from the fire. It's going to be permitted only if it's to warm it up. So related to that, we had a machlekes b'sham b'sil by a kli sheni. Are you allowed to pour even the tzainin into the chamen? Which, again, generally we say, the way Rashi translates the sugya of tatar gavar, still Beisil says it's permitted because it's a klisheni. So if it's a klisheni, even cold into hot, Beishami says no. Not only can you not do you can't do the hot. You could do the hot into the cold, but Beis Shammai said you can't do the cold into the hot. Beis Hillel says yeah, you could even do the cold into the hot because it's a klisheni. Then we had a machlekes Tanakama in Beis Hillel and Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh in the opinion of Beis Hillel. Are you permitted to pour the hot into the cold by the amvati? So they both agreed that you can't do the tzayin into the chama. So although as Tosh explains the amvati, the bathtub is let's say klicheni, it doesn't make a difference. The bathtub is very hot. So either it itself is very hot or it could be confused with a kli rishon. So the cold into the hot you can't do. But then we had a machlekes, the Tanakama Shimon Manasseh, we were going to get a bathtub. What's the halacha? Can you put the hot into the cold? Tanakama said for Beis Hillel that that's going to be permitted. Rabbi Shimon Manasseh says, no, that's usher. You can't even do the hot into the cold when it comes to the hot water of a bathtub. Now, the Gemara concluded, not like Rabbi Yosef thought, that a safel, the wash basin, is not like a bathtub. So therefore, it's going to have the same halacha like any klisheni, which we said. A klisheni is not mavashal. As we see, that was the practice of Rabban, that's actually as we rule, like kapad amana. When they came to a mana, which is a vessel, which is a klisheni, any cup, any bowl is a klisheni. You don't put that on the fire itself. It wasn't particular. Didn't care if it's hot into cold, cold into hot. Klisheni is mutter. A bathtub might be the one exception, although it's a klisheni regarding pouring the hot into the cold into the hot. And then we had a machlikas regarding the hot into the cold. But regarding klisheni, that we're not concerned for. Which that takes us into the discussion of the next Mishnah, which spoke about the frying pan, which is boiling hot. So although it's off the fire, but still, since it's a kli rishon, it's going to be mavashal. Now, Rabbi Yehuda was lenient regarding spices, which what we call them as the chumrei bishul. They're hard to cook, the way Rabbi Yehuda understands it. And therefore, even in the kli rishon, as long as it's off the fire, he says it's going to be mutter to put it on to that into the pot if it's off the fire. Except when the vinegar and brine, where that really makes the thing cook more, that's when it's going to be us. Now regarding salt, we had three different opinions. Rav Yosef thought to say that it's like spices, which kli rishon would be asa. Then we had a brisa of Reb Chia that said that no, it's not like spices. But we had two different versions. What does it mean not like spices, which are two opposites? Either because even the klisheni cooks, so you can't put your spices in the klisheni. It is salt. Or no, the salt's not like spices because even the kli rishon, it doesn't cook, which would be like bisur detur, which is like ox meat, which is so hard to cook that it has to be cooked on the fire, if else it doesn't cook. That's how salt would be. So again, that's the two different interpretations when it's not like spices, the salt. Either that it cooks even in the klisheni or doesn't even cook even the kli rishon that's off the fire. They went to the next Mishnah, which we started for the second half of this parak regarding the laws of muktzah. So you're now to put a bowl underneath the lamp to get the dripping oil. Now, what's the reason for this? So we had Rav Chiz's halacha with a related halacha, which is essentially the same thing. He said you're not allowed to put a bowl underneath the chicken to catch the egg. But you're allowed to put a bowl on top of it. What shaykhis? Like why is that forbidden? Why is that permitted? So Rabbi explained that regarding that first case, it's not the norm to have an egg that's being laid on a slope. So that's what's called hatzalah she'eina mitzuya. So there, we did not permit you to do what's called moving a kli l'tzayrich davar she'enoi nitel. Something that's not usually moved, which we generally call that muktzah. You can't move a non-muktzah item for something that is a muktzah item if it's hatzalah she'eina mitzuya. So you can't put the bowl beneath the dripping oil. You can't put the bowl beneath the chicken because that's not the norm. But in the second case, where if let's say a chicken generally lays an egg where people are around, let's say in the garbage dump, where that is hatzalah mitzuya, so then you are allowed to move a bowl l'tzarich davar she'eina nitel. And that's the difference between those two cases, and that's the same understanding of Halacha Mishnah, that you can't put the bowl tachas ne'el kabbalah shemen because it's hatzalah she'eina mitzuya. Now, on that, Abaye asked, on that premise of Rabbah, that you're telling me hatzalah she'eina mitzuya, you can't move a bowl that's not muktzah for a bowl that is muktzah, which is l'tzarech davar she'eino nitel, from 5 different cases. In our daf, we saw 2 of them. What do you mean? We had a case of a barrel of tevel wine, which you're allowed to bring a kli tachteha, and I get it. Tevel is something that cannot be moved, because it's tevel, it has no Shabbos utility, you can't eat tevel. And also, it's not commonly that it bursts. So it's atzola she'eino mitzuya, and you're moving something, l'tzarech davar she'eino nitel. No, he says no, it's talking about new barrels, which new barrels tend to burst, and therefore it's atzola mitzuya. And therefore, that we did have that dispensation over there, that you could move it, l'tzarech davar she'eino nitel. We had a case that you could put a bulb underneath sparks, which sparks are muktzah, it's a davar she'eino nitel, and it's also not so common. I said, no, sparks are common, and therefore you could put the bulb beneath it to get it, and therefore it's considered atzola mitzuya, and therefore that is included in the dispensation, just like the case of putting the bowl on top of the egg, again in contrast to the halacha of that Mishnah, and put the underneath the chicken, where that's going to be us, because that's atzola she'eino mitzuya. Thank you to Anytime for hosting us.